Today I will be talking about traditional foods of Edinburgh, Scotland, and their historical influence. I'll talk about the traditional dishes, dive deeper into the making process of a dish, food etiquette, cultural uses of food in Edinburgh, food choices, health benefits of the traditional dishes, and wrap up with restaurant recommendations. Traditional foods of Edinburgh are haggis, Scotch broth, Cullen skink, crenachan, and shortbread. Haggis is the national food of Scotland, and I'll go into more detail about what it is and how it's made in the next slide. Scotch broth is a traditional Scottish soup made with lamb or mutton, barley, root vegetables, and flavorful herbs. Cullen skink is a traditional Scottish soup from the town of Cullen in northeast Scotland. It's made with smoked haddock, potatoes, onions, and milk. Crenachan is a Scottish dessert made of fresh raspberries, whipped cream, toasted oats, and a generous drizzle of honey or whiskey. Shortbread is biscuits that are made to be buttery, crumbly, and that pair well with a cup of tea. Haggis is a delicacy consisting of sheep's heart, liver, and lungs, minced with onions, suet, spices, and oatmeal. Then it is all wrapped up in the animal's stomach. What is important to the cooking process is that the lungs are cooked first, then the mix of ingredients gets cooked again, and finally cooked when the consumer takes it home to make sure that the lungs and heart are fully cooked through. There is a video attached to these slides that we will watch the first 2 minutes of.
We're in Edinburgh, Scotland, and we're about to visit Maxwell, a third-generation family-run haggis producer. What we're about to see is a traditional haggis, which is encased in an animal tripe and stuffed with meat, spices, salt, and a few more ingredients. So let's go and find out which ones.
I've always been curious about haggis, and finally I get the chance to travel to Scotland to find out how it's made and why it matters so much to Scots. Leading me in this journey is James Maxwell, who has turned his grandfather's butcher shop in Edinburgh into one of the most successful haggis companies in the UK.
Being a boy in a family business, I never get tired of eating haggis. From when I was old enough to understand what my dad did to, 40 plus years later. I love haggis. I love haggis.
There is no steadfast rule as to what specific animal has to go into haggis. At Maxwell, the base is lamb lungs and beef fat.
I'm the third generation managing director of McSwain's. We're still using that same recipe that we started with in 1953. You can have a pork haggis, you can have lamb and beef, you could have a lamb, beef and pork. There's some people make venison haggis. We've made venison haggis in the past. But as long as this business has been making haggis, we have always made lamb and beef recipe.
How many lungs are there in?
Oh, hundreds. They've been, it's a big block of meat that we guillotine, but there's hundreds.
Okay. And how many haggis are these going to make?
By the time Connor's lifted everything for this batch, it will make 2,000 puddings or 4,000 portions.
Each pudding is meant to serve 2 to 3 people, so that is about 2 portions per pudding.
It looks like marble.
Yeah, it's like
It looks like the...
Alright, back to the slides. Haggis is very high in vitamins and minerals like iron and magnesium due to the liver and heart included in the ingredients. Cullen skink has potatoes that provide potassium, magnesium, folate, vitamin C, vitamin B6, and fiber, which also makes this a nutrient-dense meal and will fill you up with plenty of energy. They take food etiquette very seriously in Edinburgh, which means that table manners are important and extend beyond just eating at a table. They're also applied to grabbing food on the go, eating at a fancy restaurant, or eating at home. It is an important practice to eat with your mouth closed and not talk when you have food in your mouth. It is also customary to start eating a meal when the host says bon appetit, tuck in, or I hope you enjoy it. If there is a napkin at the table, you must put it in your lap. A general rule about eating is that you should try to eat at the same speed as everyone, not too slow or too fast. Lastly, it is always important to be polite when accepting or turning down more food. An important celebration that happens every year in Edinburgh is called Burns Night. It includes traditional foods and is usually held on or around Robert Burns' birthday, but can be held at any time of the year. The first course is usually Scotch broth, followed by haggis as the main or intermediate course. There is also dessert of the traditional dish crenachan and cheese board passed around as an addition to the meal. The main purpose of the celebration is to celebrate good fellowship in food, as Robert Burns did in 1801 at his cottage. Usually during the meal, works of Robert Burns are cited and enjoyed by everyone at the meal. Scottish food choices have been traditionally called the Good Scots diet. It consisted of oats as the main grain, vegetables like turnips, potatoes, leeks, cabbage, kale, nettles, sorrel, and garlic, dairy products like butter and cheese, seafood like fish, shellfish, and seaweed, and some meat and game, and many kinds of wild berries. Currently, the typical plate is similar to what we see in other cultures we have studied this quarter, with a plate showing the different food groups divided into that plate, with bread being on one side, oil being on another, and all that, yeah. These are some restaurant recommendations for enjoying traditional foods in Edinburgh. I do want to put a disclaimer that I personally haven't been to any of these restaurants, but wanted to talk about local places where you can try these traditional foods. The first recommendation is Gardener's Cottage, which features a unique dining experience of enjoying a meal inside a cottage from 1836. The next recommendation is the White Hart Inn, which is the oldest pub in Edinburgh, dating back to 1516, and is said to be haunted, like many other pubs in Edinburgh. The next recommendation is Angels with Bagpipes, which is a fine dining experience in a 16th century building, mixing old and modern ideas together in the restaurant and food. The final recommendation is the Whiskey Rooms. It is a cozy bistro with a blend of old and new interior design and has a large selection of whiskeys to try. Thanks for watching my presentation on the traditional foods in Edinburgh, Scotland, and their historical influence. This presentation has hopefully opened you up to trying traditional foods from a place like Edinburgh that you might not have considered before. To end this presentation on a fun fact, did you know that the national animal of Scotland is a unicorn?